you got to be okay looking stupid sometimes, especially in the beginning, because we all do it, but as long as you can keep moving forward, right? I think that's half the battle is like in our own heads.
Welcome to the NeverEmployed Chat. My name is Sam, and I interview people who make a living beyond salary jobs, entrepreneurs, business owners, and investors, so that we can learn from their stories together. There are many great ways to make a living, and even more ways to wealth. At NeverEmployed, we encourage you to think of alternatives to employment jobs. What would you do if a salary job was simply no option?
Especially on social media, it's like advertised as like get rich quick. And, I work in the health and fitness industry. So whenever I see that, it's like I see red flag, because I know in my industry, it's like lose weight fast, like those type of things. It's like, yeah, you can lose weight quick or you can make money quick. But usually if you go down that road, it doesn't last or end up well in the end.
So what was this challenging for you in the beginning? I mean, when did you start with fitness and nutrition?
I started my life pivot about 4 years ago. I used to work a very traditional corporate job, sat at a desk for 60 to 80 hours a week. It was pretty intense. And then, I kind of hit that point where I was like, I could keep going down this route. It's very, it's a very kind of structured, straight route. You can kind of see where you're going to end up and very safe. But at the same time, I knew in the day-to-day of what I was doing, I just wasn't like satisfied. I wasn't happy. I felt like I really wasn't listening to my gut. And I always grew up being like an athlete, and I wanted to get back to those roots of kind of like just really at that point was just, at that point, I was just like, you know what? I want to focus on just making myself a little bit happier than the situation I was. I had to take a step back, and I was like, what am I good at? What do I like to do in my free time? And I really took a lot of thought into, all those things. And I realized that doing something around fitness, nutrition, again, was like my kind of like direction. And I loved just like in general, just like helping people better themselves. Like that's something just as like that motivated me more than anything. So my first step was being a fitness coach. So I started that 4 years ago. I worked in a commercial gym, and coming from my background working in the corporate world, it was kind of difficult to go from wearing a suit and tie every day to wearing wearing gym clothes and, making minimum wage. In my mind, I kept thinking, if I give myself a year and I keep that same work ethic that I had in my corporate job, because I was more passionate about following the side of these things I was naturally interested in, I was just like, I owe it to myself. And I just kind of, in my gut, I was like, I'm just going to figure it out. I'm going to take that leap, and I don't know 100% how it's going to work out. And, the first 6 months is obviously super challenging, and, faced a lot of adversity. I had to downgrade my apartment and all that stuff. That was not easy to do. But when I got into it, I really started to notice things started clicking. I built up like a really solid book of business. I was number one in the company I was working with. And it was like kind of all these just sort of like small wins that I was just noticing. I was like, you know what? Like I'm not where I want to be, but I see things are working. And I just kept pushing. And then I got some momentum. Everything was going really good. I was going to be independent, a trainer and all that. And then COVID hit. And then I was like, whoa, this isn't what I expected. Like I had all this momentum I built up. And then when COVID hit, I moved back home with my parents, which is again, like, not something I wanted to do at 30 years old, but it gave me an opportunity to pivot again to figure out, okay, what do I do now? And that's when I got into starting my online coaching, fitness and nutrition business. That was something I always had in the back of my mind I wanted to start, but it really sped it up. And, I've been doing the online coaching now for obviously since the beginning of COVID. And like, it's just been gradually getting better and better. And the results of my clients have been getting better, and my retention is getting better. But it didn't happen overnight. It's just more of like a steady progression. And right now, today I don't work in a gym anymore, right? Like that part of my life is over. Now I'm just focusing on, building my business. I'm hiring people. I have a dietitian that works for me, and I'm still even like thinking about the other pieces people I'm gonna bring in to really kind of take it up a notch. So it's really exciting to see how this is all kind of coming together, and it's still very early. Um, but that's kind of like my journey in terms of kind of like where I started and kind of where I'm at today. And we can I don't know where you want to take it from here. We can pivot however you want, but
Yeah, from my point of view, that already sounds super, super impressive. So it actually sounds like you're already on the way from self-employed to business owner. So, of course, you're still spending a lot of time in yourself in the business,
yeah.
but yeah, already hiring people. And so, super impressive from my point of view. I just wondered what motivated you in the beginning, or what helped you to stay motivated. I think what people often say is that they have a very clear why they do something, and especially for you, going back from your corporate job and like taking steps back, starting at a minimum wage, as you said, I imagine that it's quite hard to get on from there.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And, I think my motivation and kind of like why I went such a different direction, I think it actually goes back to just me. Like I'm dyslexic. So I always had issues. Like never was the best student. I never failed anything, but I felt like I never wasn't that good. And then going into the corporate world, it was kind of like the same thing where, I always had a great work ethic and I always got my job done, but I just felt like I didn't fit the normal, typical mold and just the way I was thinking. And I was like, you know what? I think that if I, again, just kind of look back at like the things that I'm just more naturally, come easier to me, I'm naturally gifted in, if I just focus more on those kind of like qualities, I just wanted to give myself a year just to go all in on that and just see what happens. I never really did that before. And it took a lot of like, just kind of self-reflection and, just kind of like understanding myself at that. Like, I felt like if I gave myself a year, and it didn't work out, I'd be okay with that because at least I tried. I could always go back to this life. I know what it is. I know it's, secure, safe, whatever. But I was like, for myself, I need to take that jump. And listening to my gut, I was just like, I just know it's gonna work out. I don't know how to explain it, but just like my intuition's telling me, and that's really the courage that just kind of like gave me that boost. And I think it's always nerve-wracking, but like, what's the flip side? Like, what else are you gonna do? It's like you know what this is like, and you're not happy. So it's like, are you gonna stay doing that, or are you gonna take a leap? And then you take a leap, and it doesn't work out in a year. And in the grand scheme, whatever, it's a year. You can go back to you can find a new job similar to what you had. So having that mindset, I think, and understanding too that when you start something new, like it takes time. Like, I think it goes back to, again, like seeing people that, build extremely successful businesses. It didn't happen overnight. It probably took years in the back end of things working in plugging away, making small wins, and then people see the final result and they go, wow, that's so good. Working in like health and fitness, again, like I make that comparison. It's like, you see someone that's in great shape, but they've probably had so many small milestones along the way that took them a long time, and then things clicked, right? It doesn't happen just like in a month when they start brand new, but it's if you can have that mentality, I think whether it's with work, with fitness, with life, I think, you'll do okay, and you'll figure it out.
Are you then also an advocate of atomic habits? Do you know the book or the idea of that?
Yeah, I actually know the book, and I haven't read it, but I've seen the spark notes and kind of like how I kind of understand how it works, how you want to like, there's ways to make habits easier to follow and things like that to optimize your day. I'm familiar with it, and I think there's a lot of parts of that are true.
And again, referring to switching from your corporate job to the gym. When you did this switch, did you actually already think about the opportunity to work self-employed in the long run, or what did you have in mind when you made this switch?
Yeah, no, I wanted to work for myself. That was always the goal. I just knew I needed something to pay the bills that, again, was around something I was interested in. So like I had to start for me to live in New York, I had to, it's expensive city. So I had to make some money. And that sort of year that I was training was building my skill set, which allowed me to know what I know now and, actually have my online coaching business. And even where my business is at now, like I said, this is really, I feel like, chapter one of where this thing is going to go. I think that there's so much, it's so exciting to see where technology is going now and how things can be streamlined and, and how I can scale in ways to reach more people, but also have good personalization where the quality is still there, because that's something that means a lot to me. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about scaling to make money. It's about making sure people are getting results. So scaling with quality, I think, is going to be a big thing. But it's interesting to see how like AI, how things are changing. And it's going to be really interesting to see how the future plays out in the next couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. I have some questions from Dan because I asked people for questions on Twitter. You already talked about the retention rate, and he's actually interested in how's the retention rate like.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So in the beginning, like for anyone starting their health and fitness journey, I always say, I look for a 3-month commitment in the beginning, because the first 3 weeks, I always say it's like, that's the time where I always say anything's, when you're starting something new, it's like you're figuring stuff out. But then after, I would say 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks, the second month is really where you should start to like feel a difference. The third month is where you should be able to look in the mirror and see the difference. So I asked for like a 3-month initial commitment, but after that, it goes on to a month-to-month subscription, just like a gym membership. But my retention rate is like 90% of people end up staying for at least 6 months. And that's just because they've made progress. They want to continue to do that. And then I would say probably 50% are a year or longer. And I think that also goes back to just like, at that point, everyone has different goals. Some people, again, want to keep progressing. Some people, it's more budget related. So, but of someone's health and fitness and wellness journey, like doesn't start and end in just 3 months. You know what I mean? It's like a kind of, there's always ways to improve things and optimize things. And sometimes it's not even just like an aesthetic goal. It's just like, working on just improving someone's general health, and they want a professional to be in their corner to just guide them through life. Because as sometimes things in life are going really easy and sometimes things aren't. And how do you handle those harder times? And that's really where I think I come and excel at, to like help. I always say too, it's like, as long as I'm communicating with someone, like we can always figure out a plan and figure out how to get someone through any period. And I think everything goes down to just communication. And I think that's why my retention is really good.
That's awesome. Yeah. Also, what you just talked about, the downs in life, is also something I heard from many entrepreneurs so far, that these are actually the crucial parts also of running a business or being self-employed, to also focus on your business. Now, in this case, not on the fitness, but the business, also in the bad times. So you need to stay consistent.
Yeah, I mean, it's life. Life is like a roller coaster thing. But how do you make sure you weather the storm when things aren't going great, and make sure they don't go off the rails? That's kind of, I feel like, how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. Who are your clients actually? Are your clients also like mostly business owners, self-employed people, or like?
I have a pretty diverse group of people, but I would say most of my clients are busy business professionals. Some are entrepreneurs, some aren't. Their focus is on their business, their family, but they just need some guidance and some structure and someone just to help them streamline the process of just their health and wellness. So yeah, I don't know if I would say if it's specifically an entrepreneur but it's usually a business professional, someone in the corporate world that, again, just looking to just kind of like better their health.
Okay, so you already mostly work with people who, like focus on improving themselves in general already.
Yeah, and I think I also, like I said, I probably relate well to people that are working a desk job and stuff like that, because I know what it's like. It's like and I feel like that also from in my industry, it's like a lot of people that have an online coaching business, like they might have only been in the gym life, and I understand that someone that is working a corporate job and maybe even balancing a family, it's like responsible, like, maybe it doesn't make sense for them to do a bodybuilding or plan, you know what I mean? Or eat chicken and rice every night. Like, they need to figure out something that's more sustainable for them, but still see progress. And that's kind of where I think I come in, because I can relate really well to those people. I know the struggles they go through. And again, just figuring out ways to just optimize what they're currently doing and just building off those wins. And eventually you look back at 3 and 6 months from the time they started, and it's kind of like, wow, I've come a long way. And that's what I try to help my clients out with.
Do you also need to motivate your clients? I think that was another question by then. How do you motivate your clients? Or do you even need to do that? Or do you expect that they motivate themselves?
I call this the gray zone. When someone starts, it's new. And if they can be consistent and follow the plan that I put in place, it's not if they get results, it's when. And usually they start to notice a difference. Anywhere from, I would say, 4 to 6 weeks is when they start to see those changes. When they start to see those changes, that's when they start to wrap their mind around, like, this is actually working. I actually like this. And then they take ownership of it. And then it's like that snowball effect where it's like they are now self-motivating themselves. It takes that initial sort of, I call it, like, again, the gray zone, where they're working, but they don't see the results right away. They're making small wins. They may be lifting more. They may be, they're making all these improvements, but they don't see it yet. But usually, like, after that first, 4 to 6 weeks, then they're like, oh, like, I'm actually changing. And that's when the light goes off. And if I can get them there, if they can commit in that beginning and be focused, that's where they're off to the races. And that's what I want to get my clients to do.
Yeah, that sounds really, really good. A little bit more back to the beginning again. How did you get your first clients in the beginning?
So the way I got my first clients, I worked in a commercial gym. This is kind of a funny story, right? So I started working in the commercial gym, and I remember my training manager, that I think it was like the couple months in, he's like, hey, Tom, we're actually giving you a raise. And I was like, wow, raise. And he gave me a form to sign, and I looked at it, and it said New York City minimum wage was raised by like $2 or something like that. But they framed it as I was getting a raise, and I looked at that, and I'm going, I'm living in New York City. This is like this. Me living on this minimum wage is like, and just letting things happen it's not going to work out. So what I did was I literally would talk to every person I saw in the gym. I would just make conversation with them. If they wanted some help, I would offer some guidance. And that's how I got all my clients. And that's a lot of work. And it also putting myself out there in the beginning, it's like you get a lot of rejection. But, I wasn't trying to push any sort of training, like you have to buy training with me. It was more of like, hey, I'm here. How can I help you? Is there anything, I want to learn a little bit more about you? And by doing that, a lot of people opened up, and I got a lot of clients that way. And that's where I was like, wow, this is like, now I have a full book of business. Now in a year time, out of the whole company that I was working with, I think there was 5,000 trainers in the company. I was top, probably like 15 in the company. I was like, things are clicking. And it wasn't because I was just sitting and just waiting for people to come to me. I was putting myself out there. And I think the same thing is kind of with social media too. It's like, you can have a social media profile, but you really have to put yourself out there, and it's nerve-wracking and scary. Some people are going to judge you. You're going to get rejection, but if you can get over that initial, the benefits are on the other side, and you can really connect and help a lot of people. And that's what I find exciting.
So you must be willing to fail a lot, actually.
Yeah, you got to be okay looking stupid sometimes, especially in the beginning, because we all do it. But as long as you can keep moving forward, right? I think that's half the battle, is like in our own heads.
Yeah, it's probably the same in the gym in general, right? So when you go to the gym for the first time, you also look kind of stupid.
Oh, totally. And then, but after you do it for enough times, it's like after a month or two, it's like you start to figure it out. And then, you kind of know what to do and not to do. That's part of the process of learning, is failing.
How did your client acquisition change over time, actually? So, I mean, especially if you're working online nowadays, you probably get people from all over the world at the moment, right?
Obviously, in the beginning, I was doing a lot of like talking to people in the gym. I talked to everyone, but then I transitioned to, like we said, COVID times. I started my online business. I couldn't go to a gym and talk to people, so I pivoted and started working on my social media, and I think the social media to me has been such a game changer. But just know, like, I started my social media channel, let's say even before COVID, I had it, but I didn't really get any traction really until like the last 6 months, where I really was like, I'm going to focus on putting out like my really high quality. I'm going to really try to dive into like putting more effort into this. And that's where I went from about 3,000 followers to, I think I'm at 62,000 followers. And that was all in the last 6 months. And I think that I've really listened to my clientele that I work with. I try to understand their pain points and also figure out, like, through trial and error of what's worked to help them. And then I try to make content around that. Again, knock on wood, hopefully it continues like this. I actually have like a waiting list for my clients now, because I want to make sure that when I take people on, they're getting the attention and the quality that they deserve to get their results. So it's almost like I'm trying to now build the team that I was telling you about in the beginning, to make sure that I have all the pipes in place to scale appropriately and also with quality.
So you rather want to grow slowly or consistently?
Yeah, I think that's the way. I think that if you want a long-term sustainable business, I could probably make a few posts and take on a couple hundred people, but right now my business model isn't there yet. It will be at some point, but I'm thinking about when I bring on a client, they're not a one-off sale. That's a client that I'm going to build a relationship with. I'm expecting them to get results and be with me a long time. If it takes longer in the beginning to take a step back, like we talked about, it's like taking that initial step back to take a bigger step forward. That's kind of my thought process as I continue to grow and make improvements.
When you started to focus on building your personal brand on social media, did you already work with someone who did this professionally from the beginning on, or did you do it on your own in the beginning?
Oh, I was doing it on my own, but also I would say, again, like 6 months ago is when I was going to take, I was like, I want to focus on really upping my content. So I hired a social media strategist, and she kind of helped me in the first couple of months of like, it's kind of like, I always say too, it's like getting out of your comfort zone in the beginning. And when you put yourself on social media, it's like, I remember I'm still getting, I feel like there's still a lot of room for improvement, but like I look at some of the posts I made 6 months ago, I'm like, ugh, like a little cringy, but I'm like, but I've failed a few times, but then I've learned kind of like what works, what doesn't work. So she's kind of helped me get out of my own way, I would say, in the beginning. But now I meet with the social media strategist I work with every other week just to shoot like content, but I'm really kind of taking control at everything else. But it's a lot of it comes down to just really then figuring out like little trial and error in the beginning, and then figuring out what works, and then keep tweaking that. And then always trying new things and not being afraid to try it. So hopefully I don't put anything out that I get canceled, but it's been going good so far. You always got to be careful of that nowadays.
Yeah, definitely. what are your future plans for like 2023 and beyond?
Now that I'm full-time doing this, I want to really build out a team to, again, help streamline the process for my business and also my clients, because I want it to be as seamless and easy as possible for everyone involved. And eventually, like, I really think even farther forward, where I think there's a lot of opportunity. And it's not just fitness and nutrition. It's like, how does someone live? It's almost like a step below healthcare, where like, how do we help people live just healthier lives to prevent all the things that happen when we get older? And I think that's where there's the technology, like there's so many wearables that tell you all this information about your heart rate, your sleep. But I think the hard part is like, how do you interpret that? And what are the action steps you're going to do to make a difference? I feel like sometimes that information is overwhelming for a lot of people, and then they don't change anything. I feel like there's a lot of opportunity for someone like a professional to interpret that information and give someone actionable guidance. And I also think it's really exciting, again, like where the future of like artificial intelligence and creating personalization at scale is here. It's just understanding where it makes sense and where it doesn't. Because I always feel like people need, especially in the work I do, they need some human interaction to keep them accountable. They don't want to talk to an AI chatbot, right, to check in. They want to know there's a human on the other side. But I think there's a lot of opportunity to see in the next couple of years where I think things are going, and where I eventually, like, I feel like the direction I'll probably end up in. But we'll see. You don't know. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. It's like I'm just kind of having fun with it and constantly challenging myself to get better and help my clients, and we'll see.
Then is there anything where people may eventually help you and on your further journey? Any challenges you're facing currently, or where you think like people may eventually support you?
I haven't thought about that. There's always stuff that comes up, and yeah, you always need a support team around you.
Yeah, okay. So people primarily find you on Instagram?
Yeah, TikTok, Instagram. I'm going to be building up probably a little bit more YouTube soon. Primarily, it's Instagram and TikTok right now.
Hey, then thanks a lot for taking the time.
Yeah, I appreciate you reaching out to me, interviewing me. It's an honor you want to take the time to learn my story, and hopefully I provide some value to you and your audience, and let's stay in touch.
Thank you for taking part in this NeverEmployed Chat. Subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interviews with business owners and investors, or simply listen to the audio version in your favorite podcast directory. Make sure to follow me on all your preferred social media platforms, so that you never miss life-changing business tips. You find me on every platform with the account name samhartmann.com. Start a business, become successful, and tell me about it. See you next time.